Hi, this is Destiny and Cindy with Keepin Podcast, and we're here today with Tattness Keith McCleary. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. Like that
We've
was
been
actually
waiting.
awesome getting that message from you guys. And just I always love when people do that, when like someone just takes their chances and reaches out and says, "Hey, like, how do I get you on the show?" And it's like, you just did. Just ask.
Oh, well, we're thankful. We are. We've been excited. For people that don't know who you are, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so you guys obviously are wrestling fans, so you'll appreciate this. I got into MMA by going to a gym owned by Anthony Corelli, who people know as Santino Marella
Yeah.
in WWE. So, um, long story short, I got in through that, and you just can't really do that forever. So, I started my show and had a bunch of people from the industry on and got into acting through that, and just happened to be a guest on someone else's show that they were producers, and they asked me if I wanted to get into movies because they felt like that's something I should do. So I got into acting and all that, and now I got a radio show as well. So just always doing something.
Sound busy.
You got to be, right.
Always busy. I know you were a former MMA fighter. Um, how long did you do that?
I think it was about a year and a half, 2 years, and then my son's diagnosis. I just kind of took priority, and I branched off and transitioned into other things, so that could kind of uh, get more of my attention, I guess. But it was a good time.
I know it's a hard subject, but while we're on the subject of Madden, do you want to go ahead and tell people before we get farther into the interview, a
Yeah,
little
sure.
bit about him? And
Yeah, absolutely. So Madden was born in 2016, November 9th, and he basically was born like sleeping. He was pretty much in a coma the whole time, and nobody knew what was wrong. No one had a clue what was happening. And so they did a litany of tests and the whole thing, and nobody could come up with anything. So they decided to send him off to Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And they're more, specialists in children's sicknesses. So they figured they would get to the bottom of it. And one day they basically called us in for a meeting, and they said, we figured it out. So my initial reaction, of course, is all right, cool. So now what do we do going forward? How do we fix all this? And they said, well, here's the thing, is what he has is a condition that's extremely rare that we don't see often. We don't know much about it, but it's called NKH. And unfortunately, babies that have this die early. And there was just um, there's no mention of any kind of hope. They didn't want you to believe that this is going to be different. It's just straight, kind of almost coldly, but you get it in hindsight. So they just made it quite clear he had the most severe form, so there was no chance. So what it does basically is it takes away muscle tone. So babies typically early in pass away because their throats collapse from low muscle tone. They have seizures all the time, things of that nature. So it's just a terrible condition. Um, so there's a lot of meetings with the specialists that were basically saying, look, as cold as this might sound, we suggest not treating him and just let him go. And then you can try again. And that, of course, not what you want to hear as a parent. So, a lot of fighting with them, and basically, told them either you treat him or I'll take him somewhere where they will, but we're doing this. And um, the diagnosis typically is they give him 2 weeks to live. He lived to be 2 years old, and then 9 days after he turned two, he decided he was done fighting, and it was like, what more can you ask, right, from such a little guy? Um, so and just proud as hell that he was such a badass, and really, uh, showed me a lot in terms of like living differently and not telling yourself you can't do this or you can't do that, because now you have to appreciate the things you never got the opportunity to do, and it just takes away any excuses you have, you know what I mean?
I'm so sorry you had to go through that. That's like you said, that's something that no parent ever wants to have to go through, is losing a child.
Right.
Um,
Thank you. Yeah, nobody deserves to go through that. It's terrible.
I know you were telling me that there was some things that you do
Yeah.
to help
Yeah.
spread
So
awareness.
yeah, in Nova Scotia, I spent 5 years there, and every Christmas through my organization, I would um, actually do a whole run of Christmas gifts for kids whose parents were just struggling. I met some really cool people that, in one situation, their husband was a roofer, so in winter, there's no work, and they're
Yeah.
just kind of paying for their mortgage and everything else. But by the time everything else is covered, they simply could not afford gifts for their child, and she was just young. She didn't understand those things. So I was like, okay. Um, I said, well, what does she like? And I'll get some things. So when they came to pick them up, um, they're like, so which one's hers? And I said, that pile over there. And they're like, pile. And I said, each kid gets 7 gifts. And I found 7 families that needed the help, 7 gifts each. And what was really cool with them was they said, we hope to be in a better position next year and do what you're doing for other people the way you helped us. And then I found out through my assistant, who happened to see on social media, they were in a group asking people the next year if they knew anyone that needed help because they were doing it. They didn't come to me and let me know or look for attention or anything. They just were doing the same thing that was done for them the year before. And that was really cool.
Yeah, paying it forward. That's so awesome. And you start something and then it just builds. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes it worth doing when you're able to help people and then they feel the need to do the same, and it just snowball effects, right? So like you don't really know just how much people are going to get out of it, but it's just cool. And I've also done like charity for NKH research, of course, and things of that nature. And I don't think people mean anything by it, but sometimes people will say things like, why? Like, you don't have a dog in that fight anymore. Your child's gone. It's like, yeah, but there's other babies that don't need to die. Just because my child's gone doesn't mean they don't deserve, to have a chance, right? So, um, it's a bizarre question. It sounds selfish, like to even think to not help someone else's child because yours is gone. Um, so I don't know. I don't think people mean anything by it. I think it comes out the wrong way, but it just,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? It's just a bizarre thing to say. I feel
Well, it's good to spread awareness too, like you are, because
right.
that's something I had never even heard of until you told me.
Me neither. Never heard of it till it affected us. You know what I mean? And yeah, just it was a long 2 years, a lot of hospital trips, a lot of this, that, and the third. That you every day you're waking up just hoping today ain't the day. That things go downhill. So every time he got a cold or anything of that nature, it spiked his seizure activity because the immune system is already taking a toll, right? So it was tough on him.
Yeah. But what you said, he was a tough kid.
Oh hell yeah, no doubt. Now he proved that because all the things that they said he would never do. They said he'd never open his eyes, he would never be able to smile, he'd never, because of the muscle tone issue. And what it does is, there's a gene that just doesn't work. So there's an amino acid called glycine that goes to the brain. The gene that's not working is supposed to break that down into reasonable levels, and when that's not doing its job, it's going to the brain in toxic levels, which is what's causing the seizures, and just brain function's not great. But one day I walked in to see him. I asked the nurse how he was, and he heard my voice and he opened his eyes and looked at me, and he kept them open ever since, which they said he would never do. And there he is, right? And then there's actually a video I have in his last month or so, I think, where he was trying to smile a bit, in spite of them saying he just was incapable, right? So, like things like that, you just look at stuff like that and you look at how tiny he was, how young he was, what he was going through, and yet he's doing all this craziness that they're saying you'll never do. it kind of makes you think, what's your excuse? Like, you can do whatever, you're physically capable. Go pursue whatever career you want. Go, help people in whatever way. It just, you change your outlook and you stop telling yourself you can't do something because that's what people told you, like you see what he could do in spite of those odds and being so young, and still fought to be here a lot longer than they gave him, so basically he turned their textbooks on their heads and just did whatever he wanted. He had his own agenda. So I think through him they learned a lot, and they also asked us if it would be okay if they used his readings for his blood levels and things to kind of gauge and maybe learn more about the condition. I was like, of course, if it's going to help, like, why would I say no? So, I'm grateful for him. That's for sure.
Yeah, he did a lot in his short little life. To have the doctors paying attention and seeing, that there's hope. That's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. There's like one doctor in Denver, Colorado that knows more than anyone about the condition, but even he doesn't know much. So whatever the hospital I was dealing with in Canada was, whatever information they had, they were getting it from him directly. He's the one that did the most research, and so the problem is their funding, because it's such a small research program that they have going. They get a set amount of money per year from the government to do research, and once that money runs out, if they don't get donations, their doors close for the rest of the year. So
do you have a way, like, if people wanted to donate to the cause, do you know how they would go about doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. There's actually a charity called the Drake Radin Foundation, and it's for NKH research.
Sorry, I'm writing it down.
No worries.
Okay. No, we can put a link up, when we post it.
Perfect. That'd be great. Yeah, because those families are still struggling with it. And after he passed, what really broke me was, like, every so often I would hear through social media, another one's gone. And I was following their stories for the duration that they were, once it was brought to my attention. So, there's some that are still kicking and fighting, and that's great. And then there's others where you just get that sad news, and it's just heartbreaking, you know what that family's going through, right? You've been there. So it's like, what they're dealing with, and it just opens wounds, right?
Most definitely does. So through all of this that you've gone through, what made you decide to, like you were talking about, what made you decide to go ahead and pick up acting?
Yeah, it was really weird. I was doing a show, and I was a guest on a show with Mona Marshall, who is a voice actress for South Park. And so we were both guests on that. And the hosts kind of said to me, we've been on your show, you're on ours now. We're going to kind of grill you a little bit. You're 6'5", 265 of muscle. You got this energy about you that you obviously aren't afraid of a camera. Like, we're talking and this is what you do. Why are you not doing movies? And I was like, nobody asked. There's no other real reason. And they said, so let me get this straight. Are you saying that if somebody pitched something to you, you would actually get into acting? And I said, yeah, why not? And they said, well, we're producers. We'll talk off air. And I was like, what the? So we're doing this live show. Like, what just happened, right? So we're doing this live show. And by the time I got off the air, I was sitting there watching Mona Marshall do her end of the show. And my social media starts blowing up, and it's like, hey, I'm a director, and I heard you were interested in trying your hand at acting, or I'm a casting director, I'm a producer. There's just so many messages all at once. And I was just like, well, this is weird. I don't know what just happened. And then Angela Joseph, who was in a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Johnny Knoxville, and she was on Breaking Bad, reached out to me and said that she had a project she wanted me to do. And I never ended up doing that one because she wanted me to be like lead actor, and I was like, I've never even acted a day in my life at this point. Like, I don't think I deserve that yet. I got to earn it. And there's so many people working so hard and, you know, really beating on their craft that it's like, give that to them and I'll work my way up to that. And so I ended up getting an opportunity with Joe Castro, who worked on like Harry Potter and all that. And he has he'll probably be mad if I don't tell people this. He has he's really proud of this. He's got the Guinness Book of World Records for he's got the record for the most kills in a slasher movie.
Nice.
So because he's an effects guy as well, so he does directing, but he does effects and everything, and he loves doing all that graphic, you know, madness. So his record's 155 kills in this movie. So he gave me my first opportunity, and it was with a few people that blew my mind because first movie gig that I get to work with somebody who was in Return of the Living Dead way back, and I was like, that's cool. And then just other people from other movies that I loved, and I was just like, this is pretty good start, you know, first start, right?
Yeah.
Can't be mad at that. So totally grateful for him. And he's re-releasing that movie where he wants to break his own record by adding more kills to it. And he's like, I want all my friends in it. So he's like, how would you like to be decapitated? I'm like, why not? You know, sounds great. Who doesn't want their head cut off?
Yeah.
You know? So we'll be doing that in the future. So that's cool. But yeah, it was just kind of an overnight thing where just somebody pitched it to me and they were serious about it and they were in a position to make it happen. And I was just like, I have to. Like, how many people can say that somebody just reached out to them one day and said, hey, you want to do movies? Like, you know what I mean? It doesn't happen.
Literally handed to you.
Right. So, I mean, you know, and it was funny because they were like, yeah, why are you not doing this? And I said, honestly, I just didn't think Hollywood wanted any more to do with me than what was already forced upon them. So I just kind of do my own thing. And they're like, no, man, you got this energy about you. You're great. And, you know, we think you'd be perfect for this kind of thing. And it just snowballed. And I met so many people in the industry that became mentors and good friends of mine. And so it's been a blast. And, you know, we got more stuff coming up. I get currently working on something with Joe Castro, who gave me the first opportunity, and Mick Strawn, who worked on like just about everything. Nightmare on Elm Street 3 and 4, Blade, Boogie Nights, Mortal Kombat, Candyman. He's done so much stuff. Like, the list is like ridiculous. And, you know, growing up with his work, and now he's like a brother to me. That's cool as hell. And Nick Benson, who did Tremors, which I saw that when I was like 7 years old. And he did Dances with Wolves and things like that. And we're all working on this thing together, and it's going to be super cool. But it's just strange to stop and think about it and be like, I grew up watching all their work, and now I'm working with them, and they're listening to my ideas, and they dig what I do. And so it's kind of trippy, you know. It's a weird small world when you get into it, but super cool and extremely grateful.
Yeah, sounds exciting. I mean, to just all of a sudden be able to just go from one to another to another to another. And
yeah,
you mentioned my favorite horror movie franchise. What was it like working with Nightmare on Elm Street?
oh my god, that was cool as hell for me too, because it's one of my absolute favorites. So one day I had Ken Sagos on my show, who played Kincaid in 3 and 4, and he's one of the funniest dudes in that movie, and I was just like, he's awesome. Mick worked on the set of 3 and 4 and the TV show Freddy's Nightmares back in the 80s that I grew up watching. So he wrote a book actually about working on Nightmare on Elm Street 4 and all the things that they dealt with. And you know, you run into a lot of obstacles. It gets bigger and bigger, and you get a higher budget, but they still don't want to spend money on things, but they want this grand, you know, set and the whole thing. And just, you run into a lot of stuff. So working with people that worked on that is just mind blowing. We're doing a horror movie together, and my character's mask is actually possibly, thanks to Nick Benson, going to be worked on by Screaming Mad George, who did some of the major effects for Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And so I actually, him and Nick Benson, I believe it was, worked on the Cockroach Motel part of Nightmare on Elm Street 4 with the gross part, right?
Yeah.
I was like, you guys are twisted, man, but that was cool, you know. And Mick Strawn actually wrote they were stuck on when in 4, if you remember, they end up in a loop where they keep repeating the same thing, but they were stuck on how do we end that? What happens to break that loop and we move forward? So he came up with this idea of what if the truck hits absolutely nothing? You know what I'm saying? How do you make that happen though? So he actually told me the story where he rigged up a cable to the axle of the truck and had it floor it, and then it can't go any further. So it literally crumples the front of the truck as if they did hit something. And it was a whole process. Dude's genius for coming up with it, you know?
Yeah. That's always been my favorite franchise since I saw the first one.
Yes.
With Johnny Depp in it.
Yeah.
And people were like, Johnny Depp was in Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yep. His first movie, and he killed it. I mean, I still love the first one so much. And then 3 and 4 are my next favorites. And, you know, so just, working with people that, and being friends with people that worked on all of those, it's mind blowing. Because if you were to tell me as a kid that was going to be the case, I'd be like, yeah, okay, get help. You know, there's no way I'd believe that. So now it is trippy when I sit and think about it. It's like full circle. It's very strange, and it just blows your mind.
Yeah, it blows my mind that you're sitting here on our podcast talking about being able to be around all those people and work with them. It's just like, blows my mind.
Oh, that's actually cool. It's an honor to do it. I love when, I get the chance to meet people, do their show. And, when I started out with mine, I didn't think I was going to have guests at first. I didn't really know if I wanted to go that route because I was concerned that people are going to be like, oh, well, it's just showing who you know and all this other nonsense. And you get in your head about it's going to come off the wrong way. And then like, who cares, man? Like, let people that actually want to hear these people talk, because we had organic conversations. So you get to hear from these people as to who they are, not just their career, because, they probably heard a lot of the stuff before. So it's like, let's just talk about what they were doing today, or what they've been doing lately besides work, right? Let them be humans. So, I mean, I've had everybody from Mick Strawn to Dig Fairs from Rob Zombie's Halloween in Hancock. He's a friend of mine. He's super cool. And Leland Sklar, who was Phil Collins' bass player forever, he was on. He's a friend of mine. He's super interesting. Scott Page from Pink Floyd was super interesting. He played for Pink Floyd, Toto, and Supertramp. He was the sax player for all 3, and he's a brilliant businessman now and hardcore into technology. Like, he didn't want to be that guy that isn't familiar with it or old and doesn't out of touch, right? So he actually works in business on top of music, doing this business with technology and creating apps and stuff like that. It's wild. Kid Rock's guitarist Kenny Olson was a guest. He's a friend of mine. Him, Stephen Perkins from Jane's Addiction and 9 Inch Nails, and Scott Page are all in a band together now. So that's kind of cool. And so talking to all of them all in the same week, so Mick Strawn, being Mick, he always busts my chops every chance he gets. So he messaged me one day and I was like, hey, sorry, man, I was talking to Scott Page from Pink Floyd on the show. So like, I couldn't answer you, right? So he sarcastically says, God, why don't you get some real guests? Like just trying to downplay. I'm like, they can't all be Mick Strawn, you know what I'm saying?
That'd be like me going, "Oh, I'm just over here talking to, Becky Lynch. Just give me a minute, and I'll be back."
Yeah.
I mean, gosh. Oh wow. So, who's been the most interesting person that you've met or worked with?
Interesting. That's a great question because I think in their own way, all of them just have something. But I think Scott Page, is probably just so mind blowing. But then again, I had Howard Bloom on my show, and he was the PR guy for everybody from Prince to Madonna to Michael Jackson and everybody in between, Mellencamp. So that dude had stories for hours. Like he sat for 2 hours just telling me all of this. And on top of that, he's like doing that for a living, but he's also like this brilliant physicist. He wrote a book about physics, and I'm like, I wouldn't even understand 3 words of that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
and then I found out all the music magazines I grew up loving that I bought religiously, he worked for both of them. He was the editor, and I'm like, wow, dude.
Wow.
Like, so he was fascinating. And then I even had a guy on the show that works for SpaceX, which was pretty wild. And then in his like downtime, he makes designer jackets for celebrities that are like $30,000 to $60,000 because they're diamond studded jackets, and I'm like, dude, that's nuts. Like, again, 2 weird dichotomy like type jobs that are so opposite ends of the spectrum, and it's just like pretty cool. So
Yeah, I was going to say, I bet there were some interesting stories.
yeah,
You know,
Jan Birch too.
friends.
Jan Birch from People Under the Stairs was actually fascinating because he told me pretty much his entire experience working with Wes Craven on that movie and the things Wes had to go through with the higher ups, the executives coming in. So he would be up hiding out on the roof of the building until they were gone because he's like, I don't want them coming here trying to tell me how to make my movie. They'll get their money. We're going to make money off this. They need to stick to what they know and let me do what I do, you know? So he would get stressed out. He would just disappear when they were coming in, and they'd look around for him and no idea where he's at. So they just get frustrated and leave. Then he'd get back to work, and they made so much money off that movie, but they're like crunching numbers, and they have no faith in, you know, movies. They don't know nothing about it. They just know bottom lines, right?
Yeah.
So Wes apparently used to get the entire cast to go out for drinks together and everything just to bond and really create a family environment. So that's really cool. And unfortunately, as I was breaking into the industry, Wes passed. And Jan on the air said to me, like, dude, he would have loved you and he would have wanted to work with you. And that meant so much. And then he told me that they were working on a People Under the Stairs series for Netflix before he passed, and then it just never saw the light of day for obvious reasons. But he said he left it up on IMDb just in memory of, you know, Wes. Like, that's what we were working on. That's the last conversation they had, was discussing the possibility of doing that, and Jan Birch saying, yeah, I'll definitely do it. So then all of a sudden he gets the bad news. So he said we just left it in like post-production or whatever on IMDb, even though it's not going to happen anymore. We just still want that reminder and his name, like that it's there. It's something that was going to happen. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, Wes Craven was such a genius.
Yeah.
His name will live forever. I mean, there's no way that he'll ever be forgotten.
Right.
I mean, I know, like, my Destiny, you know, there's movies that I was watching of his that I've introduced her to, you know, so I know it's going to be the same, you know, growing up, because we're both horror movie fans. We love it.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cool. Yeah, they're so profitable too, honestly. Like, Mick always tells people that back in the 80s, believe it or not, doing Nightmare on Elm Street at that time, he said, like, you were below like soap actors. Like, you were viewed so, like, you were damn near as bad as lawyers to some people because you did horror. It was so frowned upon. It was so lowbrow, right? And now look at it, it's huge. And, you know, he's like, you were working on Nightmare on Elm Street and you were embarrassed to tell people that that's what you were working on because they would look at you like, ugh, you're one of those. You know what I mean? Like such a
Yeah.
low class human. And now it's so widely accepted and loved. But he said internationally, over in Europe, that was never the case. They just viewed anything like that as just cinema. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
art was art to them. They loved and respected Nightmare on Elm Street before America or Canada even really had that appreciation. So it was really weird. And Robert Englund, being as smart as he was, saw that, knew it was going to be huge internationally. So he cut himself a deal with them because they didn't think they had anything here. So he said, I want, instead of more money, since you guys are being so stingy with that, I want back end for the rights to the international. So he was making all that international money because as far as he was concerned, and he's not wrong, he was the character. You know what I'm saying? He made that character successful. If it wasn't for him, there wouldn't be that popularity. So he deserved it, you know. But he also believed in it enough that he saw what they didn't see. He saw what they had. They had no idea. They thought it might do okay. It might, you know. But it was just so obviously loved that he just knew. He had faith in it. And so, you know, it worked out. He's just brilliant. And Wes was brilliant, but he wasn't doing the second ones or the third or fourth, right? Like he didn't want to do anymore. So it was, I think, Bob Shea who didn't really see at the time. Once they did 3 and 4, they were kind of like, oh, maybe this is going somewhere because they just kept going and making stupid amounts of money. But I think Robert saw that from the start and knew that it was going to be. So it's pretty fascinating that you see the business side of the art too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I totally agree. Robert Englund was Freddy Krueger.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who else ever plays him.
That's right.
He's Freddy.
That's right. You know, he made that character. A lot of people don't realize that he almost didn't come back for the second one because they didn't want him.
Oh, it's horrible. I didn't know that.
Yeah, they felt he wanted too much money. So they got this.
It's worth it though.
Yeah, they got another guy to do it, and he was terrible. He was walking like he was Frankenstein. He like had no clue how to be this character. And eventually somebody just said to him, if you don't get Robert back, I quit. So they reached out, they got rid of this guy, whoever he was. They just replaced him with Robert and said, okay, you want this, we'll give it to you, you know. But Robert wasn't unreasonable. What he wanted more than he wanted money was he wanted guaranteed at least 48 hours off. So like, I'm not going to go home for an hour or 8 hours and then I have to come back and get this makeup done again for another 8 hours. Like once it's off for a couple days, like, because it was irritating his skin. This is all in Mick's book too, where the adhesive was really irritating his skin. So he was in rough shape and it was getting agitating and like, you know, painful and really puts you in a bad mood. You don't want to go sit there and get a brush in your eye every, 8 hours and all this nonsense, right? So he just kind of wanted that extra time. And if you think about it, a lot of people don't realize in the first Nightmare on Elm Street, Robert does not have a lot of screen time. You know what I mean? Like if you actually pay attention to it, it's like, oh, he's not even seen very often.
No.
So filming for him, they didn't want to pay him much because they basically paid him as a secondary actor kind of deal. He wasn't the lead in their view. So it's funny how that changed.
It is. And my goodness, I mean, for them to have not considered him as like the lead because he didn't get a whole lot of screen time, all that had to happen was that glove had to show up.
Yeah.
You knew.
Yeah.
It was him. I mean, that's Robert Englund. That's Freddy. That's
right. So they didn't really at the time, they didn't know how to navigate this. They didn't really know what they had. So by the time they got to the third and fourth one, obviously things changed. Beatrice is a friend of mine. She played Freddy's mother, and that was cool. I'm actually another one that I love Halloween as well. So I'm actually friends with Sandy Johnson, who was Judith Myers in '78 in Halloween at the beginning, and that blew my mind because I saw that way back. First time I think was '97 or something when I finally first saw that movie, and you know, a bunch of years later, you could go to Facebook and look through your friends list, and you're like, "Wow, what happened here?" You know, it's kind of strange because it's like you immediately think of their work before you think of, you know, anything else, right? So
Yeah. Gosh,
small
how does
world.
it feel to be God's favorite? You know, right?
Someone just said that to me yesterday, and that was the first time I ever heard that, and that's hilarious. I've never heard that till yesterday. Someone said that to me yesterday, and I cracked up, and I'm like, "That's a new one." And then you just said it now.
Well,
That's
there you
hysterical.
go.
That's so funny. The odds. That's
Now,
hilarious.
somebody says it a third time.
You know, that was
Wow.
mind blowing. That tripped me out.
So, what is your favorite franchise? Horror movie
Yeah, definitely Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Halloween's a close second. But Friday
Not
the
just because you
13th.
have to work with them, but
No. I grew up like hardcore. Like as a kid, Freddy was kind of an obsession for me because he freaked me out, but I was so intrigued by why. You know what I mean? So Friday the 13th, like oddly enough, for a guy that does horror, this blows people's minds, but I'm not a huge gore guy. You know what I'm saying? Like I get a little bit like, nope, can't do it. Browning out. You know what I mean? Like can't stomach that. You know, a little too much. So all that like, you know, hardcore stuff like Hostel and all that will never be something I watch. Sorry, just not doing it. So Friday the 13th for me was hit or miss. It's kind of like, you know, it was graphic enough, but it was campy, so it wasn't terrible. It had its moments where it did look pretty realistic, and you're like, you know,
yeah.
but I'm friends with so many people from that franchise as well, so I respect it. And you know, like CJ Graham, who played Jason in Part 6, is a friend of mine, and you know, it was really funny. I was doing a couple of years back. I was doing a Halloween show for all of October, so I reached out to him to see if he had the time. And he says, yeah, man, just here's my wife's number. Contact her because she does my booking and whatever. So I was like, all right, cool. And then I'm like on the air. I was like, it's kind of weird to me that I gotta reach out to Jason Voorhees' wife to see if he can come out and play. Like, you know, I need his wife's permission. Even Jason has to, you know his boundaries and so you know, it's kind of funny. But he's a great dude, and he's living his best life, man. He does the horror cons and all that, but he's living out in Montana on a ranch. He's got a beautiful property and just hangs out by the fire and goes and makes money doing the because he was a military veteran too, right? So like he's got all that going for him. Like he's probably got a great pension and the whole thing. Probably made a fair amount of money from acting and, you know, doing these horror cons and making money still doing these appearances. It's a pretty sweet gig, you know.
Yeah, for sure. Do you? We were talking about wrestling. You know, we're huge wrestling fans. You mentioned somebody. Who was it that you mentioned?
Oh, Santino.
Yes.
Yeah.
What was it like being around him?
He was cool as hell. Like
Training.
right out the gate when he walked in, I was like, oh, he owns and operates this. I thought, you know, you usually get these situations where somebody's name is attached to it because they own it, but they give it to an investor, sell it, and they would just make money off the name. So I didn't really think anything of it. But he came walking in, and I was like, oh, okay, I stand corrected. So I just went up to him, and, you know, because he saw me, and he's like, hey, and I just shook his hand, and I said, you got a beautiful gym here, man, because it was an Olympic quality facility.
Wow.
So it had everything from an octagon to a ring for boxing and pro wrestling training, and, you know, heavy bags, weights, not so many machines, more free weights. and then a green runway for sprinters to practice their craft. So when Pan Am Games came to Canada, one of the countries that was involved reached out to him and asked if they could train there. And he's like, absolutely. So it was in the paper and the whole thing. He grew up in the same city I did. So we had that in common. And so that's where he got the character from. Was he's like, growing up, we had all these people that immigrated from different countries, and their dads would like try to be that like, I know English real well and butcher a saying, and looking at you like, right, see, I get it, and they're like, you just butchered that, you don't even know what you're talking about. So that's where he got the character from, and he had fun with that, and broken English, and just basically slaughtered the English language and old sayings, and it was so funny. But he's one of the most chill people. He's such a good dude. So a lot of pro wrestlers are, honestly, like,
Yes.
I haven't met one yet that was not like a really cool individual. So, and not to say they don't exist, I'm sure they do. Everyone has their days too, right? Like,
Yeah.
people run into you, and you always got to be aware of, like, you always have to be aware of people's first impression of you, because they don't know you're having an off day. They're just trying to support you.
Yeah.
And they're, it's cool that someone, is tripped out because they get to meet you or whatever, and want you to sign something. It's almost ridiculous to me at times, but you're appreciative. So you just kind of gotta put that aside and give them a few minutes of your time, and not be standoffish or whatever. And some people get that, some people don't. Some people have their moments where they just can't help it. And then you got guys like DDP, for example, that he always thinks you'll never forget the interaction you had with the person. So make sure that they remember something positive. Don't, you know what I'm saying? And like, no matter what rush you're in or whatever, give them your time, be cool, because they'll remember that forever. And, whatever you're going through, you'll forget about it eventually and you'll move forward. So don't leave that on them. Right. So, which is great advice. I mean, I've had my assistant tell me that people tripped out because I would stand and talk to them for like 20, 30 minutes, when they run into me. And, I would tell them basically who I'm a fan of, when they're talking about what a fan of my work they are or whatever. And, you just have those conversations with them, and they're like, wow, you're like super chill. I'm like, I'm just a dude with a cool job. Like, I'm not better than you. Let's just talk, man. I'm a fan too, and like pro wrestling, for example, huge fan, grew up with it because my grandfather got me into it at an early age. So like, I've always been a fan of it, and knowing half these people now is pretty wild. So, it's just a small world, and it's very cool that you get to experience those things, and still remain a fan of it. You know what I mean? Like, even though you get to do stuff, you got to still love it, but it does make it hard at the same time sometimes to watch a movie and watch it as a fan, rather than sitting there and like taking notes on how something was done and what worked, and just be like, I want to do that next, like that worked, that lighting or whatever, or that mood or that tone. Just, they could have went a different way with that, but that was it. You know what I mean? And you just sit there and you kind of like, oh yeah, just watch it and shut up. Like, you want to remember sometimes that you're still a fan of it, and be able to forget that it is, a movie, and kind of get into it. Right. So it takes time to find that balance.
Do you catch yourself trying, like, picking it apart if you see something that don't look quite right?
Terrible for that. I'm not gonna lie. Horrible for that. But at the same time, I'm also the same person that advocates, like, it's hard, dude. So just be chill. Like, you know what I mean? People put in a lot of work. Nothing's perfect. We can sit here and say, look, Nightmare on Elm Street has inconsistencies. Whether we love it, but it does have its things where they're like, oh, they botched that.
Yeah.
That didn't work out, or that's not how that works. What were they thinking? Like in the second one, Freddy comes into, reality like on his own. That's not a thing, dude. But they did it. So I guess they're making their own rules, and you can't pick it apart. You still love it,
Oh,
so
yeah.
you gotta kind of catch yourself and be like, okay, relax, nothing's perfect. Like, better hope your next movie's better and perfect then, right? So you catch yourself and you hold yourself accountable. But yeah, you can find yourself saying, oh, I would have done that different, or but it's cool, like for the most part. I found my way of being able to just sit and watch something as a fan again, without businessing it to death,
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a good thing, because I know it has to be almost disappointing, like you were saying, to sit and watch one and not be able to just enjoy it, but to be looking at every little detail.
yeah, it does take you out of it sometimes, where you're ruining it for yourself. So then you got to go back into fan mode a little bit and just be like, I'm just gonna watch this because it's cool, like not trying to, analyze it or take notes on what I want to attempt with my next project or whatever, and what worked for them and what didn't and all that. Sometimes you just want to just get into the story, and that makes it, to me, that's what makes it a really good movie, is if you can get me so into the story I forget that this is how this is done. You've nailed it, you know what I mean? So to me now, that's the ultimate sign of a really good movie, is like, I totally forgot to be critical because I was so invested in what's happening.
Do you ever sit and watch and go, oh, I know that guy. I know
Oh my
that
God, all the time.
guy.
So annoying to people. It annoys the hell out of people, I'm sure, because everyone's like, who don't you know, bro?
Right.
Like, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty true, but it's kind of cool. But now it's more, you're just happy for them that like they did a great job. And like I told Dig Farish, like, dude, I went to see Rob Zombie's Halloween reboot when it came out in the theaters, and I was like, you stood out to me. I was like, that kid is creepy as hell, and he's so good at this, because he can look so angelic at one point and then look just so evil the next. And I'm like, this kid is killing it. And to have him on the show, become friends with him, and we're shooting the breeze about that, I was like, dude, I get to tell you how good of a job, because it still holds up. I go back and I watch the movie again, and I'm like, he still blows my mind, And so he told me a hilarious story. He said that's why, he's like, the food on set, Rob really spared no expense, and the food was really good. So he said that's why in Hancock I was a little pudgier from all that eating all that food on the set of Halloween.
Excuse me, I'm still getting over a cold. So.
Oh no.
No, we were talking about wrestling. Who's your favorite wrestler right now?
Right now? Oh my God. That's actually a great question. The one that I would have to say was my favorite that just passed, unfortunately, was Bray Wyatt, of course. Amazing, brilliant mind. Had conversations with him about even doing movies together and everything, and then get that terrible news. And I honestly, I sat that day with not much to say. After hearing it, I was just so mind blown that it happened. But I think Roman's killing it. I know people are pretty critical about, okay, it's time to let that go, and it's run its course and the whole thing. But I think it's still the best thing they got going on right now. So, and just personally, I think with how far he's come, that's impressive to me. Like, he's really come into his own and fixed all the things that were lacking with him prior, and it's like a night and day difference. So I got to give him that. And even this LA Nightcat's like really blowing my mind. I never really paid much attention to other promotions, so I didn't really see his earlier work. But except for like the odd YouTube clip or something. But that dude like really knows what he's doing, it seems, and I'm pretty impressed by him now. He's grown on me. He's convinced me. So he's another one I would have to say is probably going to be one of my new favorites if things keep going this way. So what about you? Like, you seem so hardcore into it.
My
It's hard to
favorite right now,
pick one. I would imagine there's so much talent right now.
Seth Rollins.
He's great. Yeah,
He's been my favorite for a long time.
he's evolved. Yeah,
See, and Roman. I love Roman.
yeah.
But see, then if we go back a little bit, Shawn Michaels.
Yes,
I've
absolutely.
always loved
Always.
him. Always. And Ric Flair. And my very first, who got me started wrestling, I don't know if you know him, but Tommy Wi-Fi Rich.
Oh yeah, yeah. Wow.
Yeah. And then Ricky Morton.
Okay, nice, nice. Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah. And gotta shout out Bobby Blaze. Love him. I don't know if you knew who he was. But
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in the 80s with I love Junkyard Dog. Like he was so awesome. You know, and like you said, Sean obviously throughout the entire 90s was like top notch. Taker, of course, right up there, just brilliant. Yeah, I grew up with all of the older obviously growing up like as a Hogan kid, like every kid was, I think, but I love Macho Man. He was dope. Like he was super cool.
Yeah.
Brilliant dude. Kevin Nash is another one for me. I always liked him. There's something about the dude, like he's honest about, yeah, okay, I got like, 5 moves, whatever, who cares? It's like still you make it work, man. Like,
Right there. He is.
yeah. Him and Sean together was probably the coolest thing that happened because it made sense. It's just a brilliant move to have this little mouthy punk that he doesn't mind yapping because there's a big dude behind him that'll step
Back it
in.
up. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So it just made you want to slap him. It worked so well. And I grew up as a kid, obviously a huge Ninja Turtles fan back then, and see Kev do Ninja Turtles 2. What a bizarre ending. He kills himself accidentally. What an idiot. Like So I was like, that was a bizarre choice, but otherwise the fact that Kev was the guy, that was cool.
And to thinking now he's been a Magic Mike.
Yep. And Punisher.
Saw that coming.
Yeah, he was in one of the John Wick movies. I mean, he's done a lot, really.
Yeah.
Really cool guy too. He's another one, just lost his son, so I had to reach out and just be like, hey man, it's the worst thing to have in common with somebody, you know what I mean? You hate to hear it.
So you're on speaking terms with him too?
Yeah, I've reached out to a lot of people. Like you get to work with so many people, and it's pretty awesome, to have that access and because again, full circle, it's like I grew up watching your work, and now I just give you a shout whenever, and see how things are going, and so yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah,
I'm mad at you now.
I figured you might be. You hit me with a steel folding chair, right? Put me through the Spanish announce table.
That'll be Destiny's job. She's training to be a wrestler. I just
really?
So yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool. Painful, I'm sure.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. I guess you get used to it over time, but it's probably a bit of a shock to the system when you first start, eh?
Yeah. So who is the most famous wrestler you have in your contact list that you could just pick up your phone and just be like, hey, what's up?
I've got oh my god. I was going through my phone yesterday because I keep forgetting half the people that I got in my list, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's this person, there's that person. Like my show, people that are familiar with my radio show heard I've got plugs from Kevin Hart and Dwayne Schwarzenegger. So Hunter was cool enough. Eric Bischoff, so probably Dwayne, I would imagine, even though he's technically not doing it now. Still, in my view, always will be a wrestler, right? So, I'd probably do one. Taker did one for me. Rey Mysterio did one for me. Randy Orton did one for me. So, like, you know, I guess they're all on a pretty even level, but yeah, it's wild. You know, I grew up such a fan, and you know, now it's like, oh, that's so weird to me. You know, I remember watching Dwayne's first match, and I was just like, I don't know about this guy. You know, like I like him, but that haircut is stupid. Looked like he had a pineapple on his head. Like,
Yes, he did.
you know,
I didn't
and
like it.
and I didn't the clothing, the whole that what the hell was that, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, I don't know about all this, bro, but you grew on me. I was like, that heel turn was needed for sure. Definitely necessary because I don't think he would have had the success. Same with Roman. I don't think he would have the success that he has now if he didn't turn heel and really get to be himself.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's so trippy to remember seeing somebody's first match and being like, oh, cool, like this dude might be all right. And now you're like, hey man, like, what are you up to? You know, like a little bit strange. You don't get used to that, I don't think.
No. Dude, you're like living my dream. I'm like, let me look at my phone and see who I have. Gosh. Your podcast. You need to plug your podcast. Tell everybody about it.
Oh, well, right now that's on hiatus. Bringing that back down the road. But it's going to be new and live, and it's going to be way different than an original. The first thing we're doing when we relaunch is we're going to play a game called that I call Inferno Jeopardy. So we're going to get hot sauces of various ridiculous degrees, from hot ones, of course. And I'm getting celebrity friends of mine to come on, and the questions will all be about pop culture, movies, music, all that. And the harder the question, the hotter the sauce. So if you get it wrong, you better, you know, you're in trouble because you're gonna have to eat one of them wings. So and yeah, so I decided that I'm gonna have the grand prize be money gets donated to whoever wins. They get to choose the charity that the money goes to. For myself, of course, it'll be for NKH research. Somebody else might now that the strike is over, I can tell people this, that I've been in touch, and Danny Trejo will probably be on that show. So
No more.
So,
I quit.
I assume he can handle spice. I'm sure he seems like a tough guy. So, but it should be fun. I probably get Mick Strawn to come on for that one. You know, if he can handle spice at his age, I don't know. He's a little soft, you know. He always busts my chops for being Canadian, so I got to give him a little something back, you know. Give him a little receipt. But yeah, we got a few people lined up that are interested in doing it, so that'll be fun. But right now, I'm doing the radio show thing, and we just did a Halloween special with for October with Mick Strawn and Joe Castro. Nick Benson was going to be on too, but he had personal things. Dig Farish was going to be on, but he had something come up. So I was like, all right, cool. Well, we got Mick. You know, when Mick's on, you never get to talk anyway. So I mean, those guys would just kind of be background, you know. So that was a cool show because, you know, we played all horror related songs. Like that's the other thing. Back in the day when Fat Boys did that Nightmare on Elm Street song, the music video with Freddie in it, Mick worked on that set. He's the guy that designed it. He's the guy that did the set for the Dawkins video for Dream Warriors, and like, so I had to play those songs for Mick's honor, you know.
Yeah, of course.
And just, you know, took their requests and the whole thing, and it's pretty cool. But so yeah, Tattness Radio is, you know, kind of taking off a bit, and got a lot coming up. So definitely got some cool things, some birthday wishes. You know, for my fiance, that's for her birthday coming up. I got all her favorite celebrity friends of mine to kind of give their birthday wishes, and I
Oh,
thought that makes it kind of special for someone, right? Like you can go back and listen to that forever. Uh,
yeah.
so that people recognize a lot of those voices, I'm sure, but yeah, Freddie, yeah, Robert, you just a bunch, So I was like, uh, Brad Dorff did a Chucky voice, and I was like, that's cool as hell. Appreciate you, So yeah,
Yeah.
Tobin Bell did the Jigsaw thing for me because she's such a fan of Saw, and I'm hit or miss with all that, but again, the gore factor, but
Yeah. Yeah. I can't do Saw. I try.
now some of it's a little much for me. Others I'm like, yeah, that's pretty gnarly, but but still I like the concept and whatever. Like Tobin's a cool dude, so I thought, yeah, hit him up and be like, hey man, can you do this? So yeah, it's Dwayne and Kev though are the funniest two together every time. They always do this as a package deal, and it's so much bickering and banter. It's just the greatest thing ever, and it makes me laugh every time. So grateful for that. But yeah, that's basically what I got going on. So big project.
Yeah. Well, when you're not busy, what's your favorite thing to do?
I'm a huge art guy. And I love the gym. So I mean, it's not exciting, but I love drawing and painting and things of that nature. Huge fan of Copic markers. They're expensive, but they're great. They're blendable. They're alcohol based, so they give your work that comic book look that's super pro. But they're like $8 a marker. It's crazy. Um, you know, um, but yeah, then going to the gym, lifting for a few hours, kind of get your head right, um, and cooking. I love cooking, so there's that. So, but yeah, other than that, it's kind of script writing or thinking about your next idea and the whole thing, and kind of putting pieces together, and lots of that.
Uh, and I'll got one more for you. And what was the favorite? I know you told me your favorite franchise, but what is your favorite movie that you've got to work on?
Ooh, I think the one I'm currently working on is probably going to
What's
be.
that?
Um, so it's almost a horror, but not quite. And people laugh at my description. I said it's kind of a horror, but like my character just kills scumbags, so it's all right. It's fine. Like,
Sounds like a good movie.
so people are like, so it's fine. They're scumbags. They're bad people anyway. They deserve it. Whatever. So it's definitely interesting. People, I think, being able to work with all those people from Nightmare on Elm Street and everything in between that I grew up watching, being a part of this, it's just going to be my all-time favorite thing I've ever done. I could die happy after that, I'm sure, but
Do you have anything you wanted to ask him? You've been so quiet.
I know, sorry.
It's all right. She's like, no, I haven't been quiet. Y'all just ain't shut up. No.
she's going to get that Spanish announce table out soon, and we're going to get it. Put a hurting on us.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. We've so enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks so much. I had a blast, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, super honored to be asked, and always happy to do it, so totally kind of caught me off guard, and I was like, that'd be awesome. Of course I'll do it, and your reaction was kind of funny, where you seemed like, I was like, that was easy. But
Well, we're honored that you said yes. Yeah.
oh no, it's honestly an honor for me. I love when people have that interest and want to, talk about your work and kind of get into what you do. And it's always nice when people care, right? So, I'm always grateful for that. It's been 8 years and I'm still forever grateful for it. It's not something that I feel the novelty fades when, you stop and think, man, people actually care about what you do. That to me is a huge compliment. So, I try to be generous with my time doing these types of things, because when I started my show, people didn't owe me their time, but they were cool enough to do it. And, they just supported what I was doing and I supported their work. So it was kind of nice to have that mutual respect. It's always nice when a guest says, "Hey, yeah, gladly,"
Yeah.
because sometimes you get let down, man. I've had one bad experience where I was a little disappointed. Um, the voice actor for Skeletor from He-Man back in the day I grew up with, his agents were like, "Yeah, he wants to do your show, but it's like 800 and some odd dollars for 45 minutes of his time." And I'm like, "Bro, I've never paid anybody to be on my show. I ain't starting now." It was just such a letdown, right? Like, I get dude needs the money or whatever, and that's great, but it just felt like all these other legends have done it out of sheer respect for me and what I do. And this guy is like, yeah, $845 or something, for 45 minutes of his time. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. So that one never happened. You know, uh, to me, it's a trade-off. You're grateful that people want you on their show and want to pick your brain and have respect for what you do. And, that to me is reason enough to do it. So
Yeah, I agree. And like we had somebody to ask us to come on their podcast, which was fun.
yeah,
And it's just like, I don't know. I like it because hey, they're getting your name out there too.
that's right. That's
You know what
right.
I mean? It's like a trade-off there.
Exactly. And you never know who doesn't know your work. So you get opportunities for new fans, right? So that's cool too.
Yeah, and we're still this big, so thanks.
Well, I'll get you on the radio show at some point, and you can advertise what you guys do and get yourselves out there. And always happy to give back.
We appreciate that.
It'll
And
be a blast.
it's been so good and so fun talking to you.
Oh, it's been a blast.
Don't be a stranger.
Right back at you. Like we'll
Right.
talk about getting you on the radio show, and we'll get you guys promoted and have more fun because it was a hell of a conversation. I had fun.
So did we. We loved it.
Awesome.
But this is Destiny and Cindy with Keep It Real. And it's Tattness. And what's the name of your radio show?
Tattness Radio.
Yes, Tattness Radio. Y'all go check it out. Look him up. Message him. You talk to him. He's an awesome guy. You won't be sorry.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I've got a shout out for Adam Newsom. Check Tattness out. You'll love it. He's a wrestler. No, he's an independent wrestler, and he's a huge horror movie buff.
Oh, that's awesome. Love it.
Huge. I mean, his character is the human horror movie.
Yeah, see, and you can go on IMDb, see my work, see what I'm working on. There's some stuff that's not on there yet, but it's coming. And so, yeah, it's always cool to meet horror fans too, right? So,
yeah,
hopefully he reaches out. That'd be cool.
Yeah, we'll shoot him a little message and say, hey.
Awesome.
But again, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you guys.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too.